Happy Friday, my happy feathered friends. I hope you're all doing well. My name's Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and welcome to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge day number 4. Hope you're all excited. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to take everything that we've done over the last few days and completely change it all. Well, just a little bit. We're going to have fun with this one. But a big good morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone joining me live on Behance, including we've got Chris Cannon, one of our awesome mentors, is in the house. Cars, one of our great community members and moderators. Ariana, one of our awesome regulars. Richard. We've got Tim, another great moderator. Elhamdi, possibly. If I mispronounce anyone's name, I apologize. We've got Joe and Pavithra, possibly. Greg. And we've got a bunch of people. If you are tuning in live, definitely let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm streaming live from slightly shaky Los Angeles this morning. We did have a little bit of an earthquake, still aftershocks from the big ones last week. Fun times. Hey Amanda, hey Antonio, and I think I actually have Antonio and Greg and Cars to kind of showcase today, so stick around for that. Alrighty, so what do we have planned for today? Let me hop over to my screen. Boop, here we go. And this is the landing page for the XD Daily Creative Challenge, behance.net/challenge/XD. And hey, Tom, welcome in Galaxia. I like that name, Galaxia. Kind of goes with the theme of our space travel landing page. So go to this landing page and you're gonna see a big blue button at the top. If you haven't pressed that yet, definitely press that big blue button. That way you get notified every single morning at 8 o'clock, approximately, when we release new challenges Monday to Friday. And then you're going to grab that challenge every single day. Hey Joss, welcome, one of our newest moderators. Thank you so much for being an awesome community member in Discord. And speaking of Discord, you can also join us in our community chat, which is hosted by Discord. So if I hop over here to Discord, here it is. There's about 11,000 of you lovely people in here. It's a great time. There's people in there asking for feedback, posting their designs, giving feedback. We got some great mentors over here, including myself. I don't jump in there too often, but Julie, one of our new creative residents, is in there. Melody, Tim, we've got Gus, Lee, Mesh. I don't know if he wants his name out there, but Mesh. And of course, Mr. Talon, one of our designers on XD, lead designer, I believe. So, hop into Discord, have a good time, chat with people, ask questions. If you have a suggestion for a feature like Hover, which is coming this year. Hover is coming this year. I said it in Discord, so it has to come this year. Otherwise, I'm going to look pretty silly. Jump in Discord, it's a good time. And Greg, I saw, is posting in the design feedback section. A lot of people are in there. So every single day, Monday to Friday, except the weekends, I'm going to be live here at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time or midnight in India. If you are watching from India, thank you. And you're going to post your work on Behance using the keyword XD Daily Challenge, or you can post it in Discord in the design feedback section. Now down here, here's what we've done so far. We started on Tuesday with a landing page refresh, and this is another progressive challenge. So we're tackling problems. We took a look at some landing pages that didn't necessarily work, and we started the process of creating something a little bit better. And as you're going to see, especially today, as you go through the process of building out a full-fledged website, you're going to get to a point where you have to revisit what that landing page looks like because you want to, serve more information on that page, and you're going to see what I'm talking about in a minute. We then improved the search experience because we realized that not only do we need a search field, we need a search field with filters and categories and recommendations and that sort of thing. And again, that kind of falls in the lines of, as you're building things out, things are definitely going to be changing. Yesterday, we took a look at the navigation experience. We broke things out a little bit. We made sure the links are front and center, and then the secondary links are kind of tucked away at the top so they're not too distracting. And I also made some changes you'll see in a moment. Now that I kind of went back and looked at it, took a break, fresh eyes, things looked a little bit strange. Boop count only 1, yes, but there will definitely be more boops. All right, so before I jump into today's challenge, let me very quickly look at a few challenges that have come in over the last day. This is from Hussein or Hossein. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but he's gone crazy with this design. He's got a great large image at the top. Unfortunately, I cannot understand, I don't read this language, but I can kind of get the gist of what's going on. He's got some great filters and categories, very in-depth, and he's got some popular destinations or deals, which we're going to be covering today. And, you know, this page just looks great. He's got even a mobile design going on, which may or may not come in handy next week. We will see. So great job. And then we've got Greg, who is in the chat right now, and he put together this interactive prototype, which is loading. You can do it, Wi-Fi. I promise. I have faith in you. All right, so he's got these little cards at the bottom, and as you click on them, the actual image in the background changes, and a little bit of the other information changes as well, which I thought was super cool. And you can also use time triggers to kind of cycle through some of these automatically. So great job, Greg. Let me hop over for a second to Finder. I want to showcase two more, and this was from Antonio, who also I believe is in the chat. And I love his use of background blurs. If you know me, you know I love a good background blur. So I thought this looked really nice. It's super clean, it's super fresh, and I thought Antonio did a great job. And then we've got Cars, who had this really cool animation of the filters coming in, the search button kind of floating off to the right. Then you can go into more detail about each place, which I thought was really nice. And yes, Joss has been giving some great feedback in Discord, so maybe you can take a little bit of credit, just a little bit. All right, so let's hop over to Adobe XD to get started on today's challenge. And I will mention that right after this stream, I believe, if everything still goes well, Talon is going to be back up with some more XD goodness. You can bother him about hover, you can bother him about dark mode. Talon, if you're watching, I'm sorry. So, challenge number 4, we are tackling sort of marketing material. We want to showcase deals or popular destinations or things like that. And this is kind of what you want to avoid. There's definitely some deals and there's definitely some popular destinations and things like that on this page, but they're all kind of over the place. You don't really know where your eyes are supposed to focus. There's a lot of text. We kind of want to avoid all of that stuff. So we really want to showcase nice, clean cards and not too much information, but enough information that someone who's visiting the page will know exactly what they're looking for, right? So that's what we're gonna do. Now let me hop over, let me minimize this. And this is kind of where we left off yesterday. I did make a few changes. I did unround the corners of the search box. The rounded corners, I like rounded corners, but they were kind of bothering me a little bit. So I made them a little bit sharper, and I kind of pulled in some of the links. I squished them in a little bit because this is a 1920 by 1080 artboard. Very rarely will you see the links all the way extending to the left and right side of the screen. So I just brought them in probably to somewhere around let's actually find out. Let's drag out a guide. And this guide is around, well, let me drag this one out. It's about 330 pixels from the side, so 1920 by 330, I don't know what that is. Math is hard, but you know, it looks a little bit more pleasing right now. So that's where I kind of ended up. And as I'm going through today's process of adding these deals, we're gonna have to make some additional changes because you'll see why in a moment. So I'm gonna duplicate this artboard down just so we have the progress of all the days in our document. Rename this day 3, and let's get designing. So, Kashish is saying, I feel like dark mode won't be much helpful since XD is for screens and ideally. I mean, it's not so much that'll be helpful because that's kind of why it hasn't been prioritized just yet, because it's not really a helpful feature, but there are people who with bad eyesight or specific, retinal things that we've heard that it helps ease the light coming into their eyes. And some people just prefer dark mode. So it's one of those things that most people just want instead of need, but some people do need it. All right, so down here at the bottom, we're gonna start creating some cards for our popular destination. And I'm gonna start by actually grabbing some of this stuff and just moving it up the artboard a little bit, just so we have a little bit more room. Now, down here at the bottom, I'm gonna grab my rectangle. Let me zoom in so we can really see what's going on. And I'm going to drag out our first card somewhere right about here. Very simple stuff, and I can turn on my guides to make sure everything lines up really nicely. And the shortcut for that is Command and Control semicolon. I'm gonna turn off the border because I probably don't need that. And this is going to house the image, the nice full width image that's going to be displayed. Now, I will note that because we're gonna be using full width images, we do want some sort of a gradient so that the image isn't kind of washing out the text that's going to be in the foreground. So I'm simply going to duplicate this rectangle, Command and Control D, move it down. And then I'm going to add a gradient. So I'm going to go into the fill, set the gradient to a linear gradient. Both colors are going to be set to black, just like that. And the one at the top is going to be set to 0% opacity. And it looks a little bit strange right now, and that's because the gradient is, a black gradient is on a white background. But once we get some images in there, things will look really nice. Now, we're going to have some text. So zooming in so you can really see what's going on, I'm going to grab my text tool, and this will be, let's say, planet. Perfect. We'll make sure that we have our right character style set up. We're going to change the text to white. And because we're going to be using a repeat grid, we don't have to worry too much about nitpicking everything, because we can always go back and change all of them at the same time. So we'll have planet over here, and then maybe right underneath, we will have the system information. So this will be like what solar system and how many light years and that sort of thing. System, light years, that sort of thing. And we're going to make this nice and small, just like that. That might be a bit too small. Let's bump this up to maybe 18, and maybe planet, we're going to bump it up just a little bit more, like that. It looks okay. Maybe, yeah, let's go for 16. All right, that's definitely a secondary piece of information. And now below, we might want a star rating on what people rate this planet in their system. So over here, we do have a lovely star. So I'm going to grab this star from the icons section, hop back over here, and paste it. Boop, there we go. Probably don't need 7 for the border. I'm going to reduce that, pop this in place right about there. I'm going to turn off the border and set the fill to white. But in this case, I want to actually decrease the opacity a little bit, because these will be the inactive stars. So it'll be somewhere around 50%, just like that. You can also press the number 5 on your keyboard to do the exact same thing. And I'm going to set a repeat grid for this and just drag this out. So I'll have 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. And set the pixels in between about 8. All right. That's looking snazzy, but of course we need some active stars above it. So I'm simply going to duplicate, and then jump in here and set these to 100%. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the active stars and actually turn that into a component. And you're going to see why I'm doing that in a moment. But I'm going to turn this repeat grid into a component, Command-Control-K, or right-click, and make component. Perfect. All right, now that we have this set up, we also might want a button over to the right so that someone can actually book this trip. So rounded rectangle, and of course we could go with a square or a sharp rectangle, because we did change the search field, but I'm going to switch things up just a little bit. Put that somewhere about here. That looks good. And I might want to actually grab the color of this button. So I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, shortcut key I, make this a bit thicker. And maybe for the border, I'm going to set it to white. I'm going to set it to the outside of the shape, and then just decrease the opacity just so it blends in with the image that will eventually go in the background, and just make this a touch bigger. It looks very strong right now, but once the image is in there, it won't look too bad. And then we need some text. So I'm going to just type out book now. And I'll make this bold, because that is definitely a call to action we want people to notice. There we go. All right, so now that we have our first card, we actually need to turn this into a repeat grid and get things going. So I'm going to simply select all of this stuff, make sure not to select the background. I've just got my card selected, and I'm going to turn this into a repeat grid. I can either do that with Command or Control R, sorry, or I can press repeat grid at the top. Boop, there we go. And now I can drag out 2 additional cards going across my document and make sure everything lines up really nicely. All right, so now that we have our cards in place, we need some information. So back over in Finder, I do have some lovely images right here. I'm going to just grab these images here, drag them onto my repeat grid. Just like that, there's a few planets. And we also have some plain text documents with some exoplanets and also some system information. And I'm going to do the same thing for that, planets and system. There we go. So now that we have our cards set up, we need to do some overrides. You probably remember that I converted the stars into a component, because if I didn't, and I went to this card here, and I wanted to change this repeat grid so it's only, let's say, 3.5 stars, it would change it on all the cards. But because it's a component, I can now go in, and you're noticing it only change it on that system, or on that planet. I can do the same thing for this one. Let's say this is 4.5. Approximately 4.5, something like that. That looks fine. And there we go. Now I'm looking at this now, right? and it's kind of blending way too much with the background. I may not want that. And that's kind of the tricky thing with full width images. You've got this massive image in the background and you've got some information in the foreground. It's kind of tricky because some things will inevitably blend in with the background too much and it'll be kind of distracting. So what I'm going to do in this case is, I do have a boop quota, otherwise I get fired. I'm just kidding. So I'm going to, in this case, select the background and simply just drag it up. So I'm going to drag it somewhere right in the middle of this search field. I added a little bit of a shadow underneath it. And this will allow me to kind of separate the page a little bit. So you have the search information at the top, then you have the top destinations at the bottom, and it's not blending too much. Now I can grab my text tool. Oh, I can't see it. Type out top destinations. Perfect. That looks good. Make this a little bit bigger. You know what? Maybe I'll type out far out destinations because these are pretty far. There we go. That looks good. Pop this there. Everything looks good. Move this down just a touch. And all of a sudden, we now have nice separation on our page and things are kind of looking a little bit more cohesive. And what I might want to do at this point, because the focus of the image has changed a little bit, I might want to change that image completely. So I'm going to go back to Finder. I do have another image I might want to use. Drag this in and reposition it just like that. Position up a little bit. There we go. Things are looking fancy now. We've got a planet. We've got a little bit of a lens flare. Who's that director that always has lens flares in pretty much every movie? Throw it in the chat because I don't remember. But things are looking a little bit better now. I can really get picky and just move things around a little bit. If I wanted the images to be a little bit longer, I can just jump in here, make changes to one of them, and also the gradient. And you're noticing because it's a repeat grid, they're all kind of changing at the same time. And I can make sure the guides are on, make sure everything lines up. Might want them a little bit more squishier. So I'm just gonna do that. There we go. Perfect. Oh, this one I have to make, there we go. That's what I did wrong. I knew something was wrong. There we go. Move this in. Perfect. So now it's not too spread apart. J.J. Abrams, thank you, Kita. Steven Spielberg probably does as well, but yeah, Chris, that image was from Adobe Stock. Most of the images I use are from Adobe Stock, but if you go to unsplash.com, there's a lot of free images there you can probably grab as well. But things are looking pretty good, and you're noticing that border on this button isn't too harsh as it looked before. I may also want to add some sort of a heart button so people can favorite some of these places. So back in my icons section, I'm gonna grab my heart. There we go, copy. Over here, I wanna make sure to be inside of one of the repeat grid. There we go, and paste. Now it's obviously way too large, so I'm gonna just drop the border to about 1, decrease this quite a bit, somewhere right about there. Make sure everything lines up really nicely. That it does, perfect. And I might wanna fill this in, but not completely. So I'm gonna fill it in with white, just like I did with the border. Just drop it a little bit. And maybe I'll have the border as white for now. Maybe I'll have it 2 pixels. That looks good. Maybe just drop it just a touch more. Now this is kind of what I was talking about with the components versus non-components in a repeat grid. If I wanted at this point, if I wanted this one to be filled in and I were to just increase the opacity, you're gonna notice that it filled it in there and it also filled it in there, which is definitely what we don't want. So in that case, all I have to do is go into any of the repeat grids, select the heart, make component, and this is the master component. Someone was asking yesterday, do you need to have the master component on your artboard? And you don't. So what I can do is I can simply delete that, go into my assets panel, drag out one of my hearts, just like that. There we go, we've got the heart. It does line up, so the position syncs across multiple artboards. But if I go into here, or multiple repeat grid cards, but if I go into here, increase the opacity on this one, you're gonna notice it does not change on this one because it now is a component. So I'm gonna make sure everything is aligned, maybe make it a little bit smaller, just like that. And those changes sync, but the overrides do not, which is super cool. All right, so now that that's done, I do wanna showcase one more time the Google Sheets plugin because I love that plugin and we do have a few more minutes that we can do that. So let's go ahead and go back to my layers panel. Whoops. layers panel. There we go. And I'm going to make sure in my layers panel, just to make sure that this is named planet. And maybe this one is named destination. And that looks pretty good. And then we have image in the background. So I'm going to name this image. All right. So just to really show you how this works, I'm going to go through and just make changes to all of these. Even though it's a repeat grid, I can make overrides, but I just want to show you how this is going to work. If you haven't checked out the Google Sheets plugin yet, definitely check it out because it's quite fancy, especially if you're working with a marketing team who controls some data. It's pretty good. So I'm going to override these, reset them back. Oh, this is planet. Planet. Spelling is hard. I say that every day. System. All right, so we've got our repeat grid set up for a Google Sheet plugin integration, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to hop back over to Chrome. I'm going to go to my Google Sheet right here, and I do have a lot of the same information I had in those plain text documents. I've got a column with some planets, I've got a system column, and I've got a column with images. I also have about 6 of them, so what we can do is if we wanted to add some more, I can just drag this down and have additional planets going down the artboard just like this. Maybe I'll spread them out just a touch more. 32 pixels looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to copy the URL of this Google Sheet back to Adobe XD. And Chris is asking, is it better to make the icon a master component or the whole card design? So that's a good question, Chris. If you're working with a repeat grid, you do not want to convert images and text into components. Otherwise, dragging a group of images or using something like Google Sheets will not work. So you want to make sure those are not components. But things like buttons and icons and stars, those can definitely be components, but do not make images or text, at least if you're going to be dragging images, bulk images into those repeat grids, do not make those components because they will not work as intended. So keep that in mind. All right, so we've got our repeat grid selected. We have our URL copied. I'm going to hop into my plugins panel down here at the bottom. And if you're brand new to XD, this is a fairly new addition. And before we had the plugins kind of hidden up at the top under the menu. If you're on Windows, it's even more hidden. But now we have a nice little plugin you can go to. And I do have my Google Sheets plugin installed. If you don't have it installed, press the plus button at the top and you can search for it. There's a lot of different plugins, really cool stuff. But I'm going to hop over to Google Sheets, paste public link. I'm going to paste it in here and continue. And then I'm going to make sure that the XD elements align with the Google Sheet columns. So in this case, image matches with image, planet matches with planet, and destination, because the column name was not destination, I'm going to make sure to choose system. And I can also randomize the content if I want to. I'm going to press apply, and it's going to bring all that information directly into my document. It's got some images, and things are looking pretty good. And you're noticing all the information populated really nicely. And the cool thing is if you need to make some changes, you can easily do that. So if I wanted to make this one Earth 2.0, I can go back over here to Google Sheets, refresh content, and there it goes, it changed. Now, I ran into this issue the other day where it did not change. I figured out why it didn't change, and it did not change because I didn't manually set the layer names in my layers panel. So in this case, planet, this has to be named, it has to be manually named. Otherwise, when you load the Google Sheet for the first time, that layer name is going to change to whatever field this is, right? So in that case, it would have been Gnuria or whatever that said, right? So that would completely throw off the Google Sheet. But in this case, it's named planet. It was manually overridden, so I can very easily refresh the content. I can refresh it again if I wanted to, and boop. Oh, it didn't work this time. Come on, you're making me look bad, Google Sheets. Well, you know, it works. I promise it works. You just saw it work. Come on. Okay, well, there you go. Anyways, that will do it for day number 4 of the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. Definitely submit your work in Discord, submit it on Behance, and stick around in just a few minutes. We've got Talon coming up with some more XD goodness. You can definitely ask him some questions, get some insights into what goes on in the world of Adobe XD, and as lead designer, he's got some good insights. So I'll see you all next week on Monday, and stick around for more. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you later.